Could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time I will read the mission and ethics statement. The mission of the Charter Schools Advisory Board is to ensure the existence of high-quality charter schools in North Carolina. And board members are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of the advisory board. Does any member of the advisory board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflicts of interest with any of the matters coming before us today? If so, please state them for the record. If at any time during the meeting you become aware of a conflict, either apparent or actual, please bring it to my attention. It will be your duty to abstain from voting on the matter and discussion on the matter. All right. At this time, we will begin our charter application full interviews with an overview from Dr. Allen.
Chair Quigley, Vice Chair Walker, and all respective members of the board, good morning. Today I will not be providing an application update. I will be providing an introduction for the full interviews that this board will conduct today.
Okay.
If you'll remember, the full interview is an opportunity up to 1 hour in length. An overview of suggested flow or timeline of the applicant's interview. The Office of Charter Schools will provide an overview of each applicant, up to 2 minutes. Applicants will then provide group introductions. They will line up at the podium, introduce themselves, will give their name and their role on the board, as well as their occupation. If there are any third-party vendors that are present today, then we do ask that they introduce themselves as well. And then the entire board and vendors, with the exception of the board chair, should be seated here. Following that, the CSAB, the full CSAB, will have up to 20 minutes to review and discuss the application and the rubrics provided. They will then have up to 20 minutes for any questions for the applicant. They'll then have up to 10 minutes to do final board deliberations, and then they will make a final recommendation at the end of the interview. Are there any questions about how interviews will go today or the process? If not, we'll move forward. On September 11th, 3 schools were notified that they have been moved forward to a full interview. On September 24th, the Office of Charter Schools released rubrics to the applicant groups. Subsequently, we did realize that Epicenter had not provided notification to applicants that rubric was in the system, and so we reached out to them to ask them to check the portal and to provide any feedback if they would like. And all feedback received, as well as letters of absence from the boards, have been uploaded to eBoard for your review. Appearing before the board this month for a full interview, we have Davis Academy Chadbourne. This interview will be led by Stephen Walker. Next Generation Charter Academy, this interview will be led by Alex Quigley. And then Old Mainstream Academy, this interview will also be led by Alex Quigley. I would like to take a moment to remind the board to fill out the rubrics that are on the Google Drive at the end of the interview so that we have everyone's full ratings for the 5 main sections of the application: mission, purposes, and goals, education plan, operations, governance, and finance. Okay, so we do need final ratings from everyone at the end of today's meeting.
Okay. I think we want to build time into that, build time in for that at the next round. If we could maybe make sure that we put like 10 minutes.
Would you all like to have a few days to do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be
Yeah.
today.
It'd be better if it was today, 'cause we could do
I'm inclined to, like,
I think we just need a little break to make sure that we do it in between the interviews.
We can certainly do that.
yeah, I mean, the other, yeah, we can talk about it. Yeah, I think if we just take, why don't we just adjust the schedule slightly? I just think if people walk out of here without scoring it, it's not gonna happen.
Okay.
Or it's gonna be hard for people to remember. So, can we just do, well, why don't we just, it looks like we, I don't know, we'll just play it by ear. We'll see how long the interviews take and you know, we'll
Fill
try to
time in.
budget a few minutes at the end of the interview for people to score. And, you know, obviously, folks, you can score while the interview's happening as well. If you already kind of know where you stand, you can try to knock that out while you're working, while we're listening.
Do we have to be logged in with that DPI email address when we're
I
filling that
wasn't.
in?
I don't
Okay, you
think
don't have to.
As long as you have the link that I sent, then you can go in there.
Okay.
Okay. And again, if you remember, this board decided that this does not apply today. This is for yesterday. Okay. So we'll go ahead and move into the interviews. So while we're getting the slide up, I'll go ahead and introduce the applicant. The applicant appearing before the board today is Davis Academy Chadbourne. They're proposing to locate in Columbus County. Their proposed grade levels and projected student enrollment are as follows. Year 1, 6 through 8, 180 students. Year 2, 5 through 8, 240 students. Year 3, 4 through 8, 300 students. Year 4, 2 through 8, 420 students. And year 5, K through 8, 540 students. At capacity, this school will serve grades K through 8, 540 students. We do have an LEA impact statement submitted for this application. We do not have due diligence. This applicant is requesting an accelerated planning year. They are not a repeat applicant. They did receive third-party assistance from Leaders Building Leaders, and they provided a $7,000 fee. They are not partnering with a management organization, and the application was deemed complete. We'll now allow the applicant time to introduce themselves and the members of their board.
Good morning. My name is Yolanda Davis, and I'm the board chair. I'm going to allow each member of the board to introduce themselves very briefly.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nishad Davis. I am a co-founder of Davis Academy, educator. I worked Teach for America Eastern North Carolina from 2013 to 2016, and have since worked in various capacities with both Teach for America, the Restorative Justice Clinic at Campbell Law School, Duke TIP, Weekend Scholars Program, the Children Defense Fund, Freedom Schools, and various educational policy initiatives. And I'm glad to be before you today. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Denise Corbett Dennis. I am currently serving as the Senior Executive Director of Program Implementation with New Leaders, which is a national nonprofit focused on developing school leaders and advocating for policies that will ultimately advance the practices of school leaders and impact kids. I've been at New Leaders for 10 years now, and my role there is one that really focuses on the full thread of program implementation, from business development to research and evaluation, technology, and program development. Really excited to be here before you today and have the opportunity to talk about Davis Academy, where I serve as a board member. A passion of mine includes educational equity and excellence for all kids, so looking forward to the opportunity. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is John Powell. I'm an attorney. I'm on the faculty of the law school at Campbell University right down the road here. It was nice to park in my parking place and walk over this morning. That's a little unusual. I direct the Restorative Justice Clinic, which is a clinical program in the law school where we get students involved in the live work of the clinic. We provide a pretty broad spectrum of restorative practices in the state, ranging from work in local schools to work in the criminal legal system. We do an awful lot of work here in Wake County in the Wake County school system. We also are called on a pretty regular basis to provide training and expertise to school systems in other parts of the state. I'm honored to be here to address you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's talk about the application a little bit before we ask any questions. See kind of what we want to focus in on. We've seen some other schools do this. I noticed the starting at 6, 7, and then kind of growing down and up a little bit as they go through. They want to use an old LEA school, and so I think we really need to get an update on the lease right away since we're talking about acceleration. So unless anybody else has anything before we get through the acceleration issue, I think that's the number one issue. So can you tell us a little bit about where you're at on the lease?
Yes, so the last time I stood before you, the school was saying that the sheriff may want the building, so they were going to put it back up before the Columbus County Commissioners. They did talk to the Columbus County Commissioners, and they decided not to put it back up for a vote because they did not want the building as previously stated. So the last conversation with the school was that I would start a due diligence period, and they would allow me that due diligence period to be able to inspect the building as we discussed previously to see what repairs would be needed and if it would be more extensive than what I have allowed in my budget. That due diligence period would start this following Monday, the 14th, if I am approved today to move forward. Since then, we also, as a contingency plan, in case the repairs were too extensive, two contingency plans. One, they have a pod that's already located on the property, which is newer than the rest of the building. So the rest of the building is older, but the pod is less than 10 years old and would be able to maintain us for the first year if needed to do so while we did any of the other maintenance that we needed. The second contingency plan is since then we've been approached by a community member who owns 2 daycares within 5 miles of that location. And the daycares already have classrooms available for us to be able to use, as well as 2 modulars on site for us to use as well if we needed to do so. And they would be willing to offer us a lease for the same amount as the school, but we would not have the maintenance or the repairs to worry about, as that would still be something that they would do.
So do you have then a firm commitment on either one of these things?
Both are firm commitments. The school has said that they will lease to us and that they will provide us the due diligence period to get the access to the building. So then we can have any specific terms that I need to put in the lease. But they are committed to giving it to us at this point.
At $1 a year?
No, their lease before, when I was here last time, their terms were $2,000 a month. You asked that I update my budget with that amount, and I did so, which means our first year we would have a surplus of only 52 as opposed to the 76 that we had previously, and we had 50,000 dedicated to maintenance just because we didn't know what would be need to maintain. It would be the same thing with the other school with the other option, because they would also be leasing it from the same price, except I would not have the maintenance, so I would have that additional 50,000 left there.
So your number one choice is the LEA old school?
That is correct.
Okay, and have you been in the building recently?
They have not allowed access, which is why they're giving the due diligence period for us to get the access and get inspectors in there as quickly as possible.
Because that's what I'm worried about is y'all getting in there and there being a whole lot more work that needs to be done, and so then you've got a facility issue, because if you get an accelerated opening, you don't get a you can't get an accelerated opening and then a 1-year delay.
Right.
If
And
something happens, how close is the other facility?
the other is less than 3 miles. It's probably like 2.5 miles away from that facility.
And how close is it to get an educational CO?
She stated that she's had an educational CO before because it's the daycare was educare, so they were actually doing an education component to it, and that she would try to get that for me as quickly as possible, but she didn't think it would be an issue.
When do you know how long ago it's had an educational CO?
It's been a while, but it's still operating as a daycare. But she's been in that building for a while, if that's what you're asking.
Where's the daycare gonna go?
Excuse me?
Are they moving the daycare?
They have a second location. So once the school was removed from this location, the actual LEA school that was there, their attendance at their daycare dropped. And so they've only been using a modular outside of one of their other locations. So they have a whole nother location with another modular as well as a facility. And they've only been using the modular outside of that location. If they grow, they have room to grow still at their other location.
What, the facility itself, the one you're talking about using, what is it comprised of?
The facility itself has one building that has 6 classrooms within that one building, and then 2 modular buildings that have 2 classrooms apiece.
And this is the school or this is the daycare?
That is the daycare.
In
So
the
we're
pod,
talking
how-
about, so, I'm sorry, Lynn, 180 students, 6 classrooms, that's 30 kids per class, right? Is my math correct?
Yeah.
There are two modulars as well, so that equals 10 classrooms. It's 6 in the
What about your art and other things like that? I mean, won't they have to have a place to, or are you gonna cart them?
Yeah, we would be able to utilize with 10 classrooms. So the first year we were looking at about 23 students per class, which would have been, I think, 8 classes. So that's 2 additional classrooms where if we needed to move around, we would have that space to do that.
What about
Modulars
office
have
space?
2 rooms?
Yes, a piece. So there's 10 classrooms in all.
What about office space?
There is additional office space, so that doesn't include classrooms. So there is actually a staff lounge, as well as I think 3 or 4 offices in the main building, in addition to that 6 classroom space. And there's also room to grow if that is where we end up going in terms of putting additional modulars on site. Previously, when we stood before you, our contingency plan was another daycare, and that daycare did not have a modular already on site. So this one allows us to move in if we need to as quickly as possible without having to move a modular and get the setup and utilities for it.
And they will cover the maintenance costs?
Yes, they're covering the maintenance and any repairs that we would have as we would be leasing from them.
Okay, any other questions on the facility?
Is it just, you had mentioned the pod that might be available on the first option. So how big is that?
Typically the pods, and I've asked for all classroom spaces and the sizes of all of them, but typically the pods are 6 to 8 classrooms within a pod, and I think 2 offices.
Big pod. That's coming in more than one piece.
Ours can move forward.
Any other questions on facility before we move on to the rest of the application?
I'm kind of curious if the board decides to tentatively move forward from here, given that they have a due diligence period starting on Monday. Is it feasible to get an update before it goes to the state board? Is that something to consider? Just because an acceleration, trying to get it done in 1 year, that facility is so crucial to have lined up. You don't need any surprises there.
And actually, having a facility locked down is a requirement of the acceleration.
It is.
Dave, is this something that the state board will do on first reading or next month, or they're gonna discuss it next month?
Be discussion, then vote the following month.
Buys us some time.
How long is your due diligence period?
I've asked for a 30-day due diligence period, but my goal is as soon as that due diligence period opens up to have a inspector in there so that I know what's before me at that moment. If what's before me at that moment is too big for my budget, then I can immediately move forward with the
That's what, 50,000?
$50,000 for the maintenance. Yeah.
That'll go fast. very fast.
Yeah,
And
the
then
school
you
hasn't
still-
been open in 5 years.
No, that's not true. They closed the school. This is the only year that it has not been open as a school.
So hopefully, maybe there won't be too much, but
Yeah.
usually if they know they're gonna close the school about 3 years out, they stop doing any kind of real maintenance on it.
And you're gonna have ongoing maintenance, so if you spend your whole 50,000 to get it ready, then the upkeep
Right.
becomes an issue.
I mean, the air conditioning could go out and that could take 20,000 to fix right there,
Yes.
Or more.
or more. I just,
I just, I know what I just spent on my house.
Yeah.
On air conditioning.
I would say that, you know, given this as an acceleration, if the board decided to move forward, I would want it to be a contingent upon updates in November on where they are with the facility, because, you know, if you go into December hoping to open July with major expenses ahead of you, whether it's the daycare or either one, we need something more firm, I think.
Right.
So.
Well, I don't think with the daycare I would have any additional expenses other than the lease because they are maintaining and doing the repairs. So I don't have maintenance and repair fees for the daycare. And the modulars are already there and set up.
Where will the money come from to do the upkeeps? Because you won't get, if you're gonna open this July, you're not gonna get money till July.
Correct. Financing where I personally guarantee. And I've already had conversations about that and am able to get that financing.
What about furniture and things like that? Because I feel like that a daycare would have something that you would have to upfit anyway, because you've got larger children, you've got furniture, you've got whiteboards and things like that, just the bare essentials that you need for school. Where's that seed money coming from? Is that what you're referring to?
They actually, in the daycare, they actually have boards, they're not whiteboards, but the new dry erase boards. They have those in there. A couple of the classrooms have larger ones because they did have larger students in the past, have larger outfitting. So we would have to supplement some of the other outfitting. The county does have some surplus that is available if needed. And we've also just been searching for some that's reasonably priced.
Okay, anything else on facility?
How confident are you with the lease with the school system? Because, you know, based on the reading of the impact statement, it doesn't sound like they're 100% behind this. So how confident are you with this lease agreement with the school system?
I think there is a mix on the board in terms of being behind us. It's a new superintendent, Deanne Meadows, who wrote the LEA impact statement. The board attorney has not been as behind us, but I think that before now they have gone through all the proper channels that they felt like they need to go through before allowing us the lease. And at this point, they are firm on providing that lease for us.
do you have any documentation of that, Yolanda?
Yes, ma'am. So everything that I've done with them has been through letters with the attorney, back and forth. So this wasn't a phone conversation. I've made sure to have documentation along the way.
And worst case scenario, you can always do the daycare center.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if you opt for the daycare center, do you have playgrounds or an
Yes.
area for gym?
Yes, so the land there, they already have playground outside as well as additional space that's covered outside if we needed to use that as like where gym activities would happen.
I'd say, you know, given the process that we talked about with the first reading of the state board in November and then a final decision in December, and, you know, again, if we decided to move forward, there's still a lot of other things we need to cover on the numbers and education plan, but I would certainly want to see something concrete in your hands provided to the board here by the November meeting that says here's the lease that we have with the school system, here's the estimated expenses from the due diligence report, or here's the daycare lease agreement, whatever that agreement looks like. I think we need to see something concrete before that December board final approval. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, let's move on in the application then and talk a little bit about the mission statement and the education plan. Seems like the focus is a lot on equity and cultural awareness that's there. And so a question that I would have is, how are you going to kind of meld those things with traditional educational things like math and reading in science, to take that focus, but also to make sure that that you reach on that equity and cultural awareness, but also reach on the educational things that you need to do as far as educating the children on basic reading skills, things like that.
We plan to use a thematic unit approach where there are main themes that are covered across the spectrum for the different areas of math, reading, social studies, and science. And with that thematic approach, using a part of our mission is school pride, that the students have school pride, with P being positivity, R being resilience, I being innovation, D being discipline, and E being entrepreneurship/education. And so those themes would revolve around that acronym of school pride. An example of that would be there's a 9-week reading program that would happen, and these would go based on curriculum that's already been created. So the theme would just be based around the curriculum that's already been produced. But an example would be a 9-week unit where students examine the concept of the American dream and what that means for them and how that's changed over time. You can utilize that in history as showing what that has meant from the beginning of our America to now, and what that dream looks like now, or what that means in their community. Same thing with mathematics, and how has, from the recession to now, and how you spend your money to budgeting. All of those things can be incorporated into the overall theme as we go. So we plan to use thematic approaches to kind of get to what we're looking at culturally relevant situations within the themes. With regards to some of the socio-emotional pieces, that's where the restorative justice pieces come in. And a part of our school day, at least twice a week, we're gonna have what's called convocation, which is kind of to settle them into the day and introduce the theme, and or at the end of the theme, kind of close that theme and go to the next one. But within those, we'll do some type of different activities to I guess kind of go into the PRIDE acronym and what that looks like. And inside of the classrooms, we're teaching the teachers how to do restorative circles, how to begin their classrooms with circles, and how to end them if they need to for classroom management. But those circles can also be used not just for conflict or any of the other things that circles would typically be used for, but also to introduce the hook for their theme that day, and to kind of go around the circle and get the conversation started for it. So those are some of the ways that we plan to utilize it. And I can let Professor Powell speak about restorative practices and how we've utilized them in the schools here, if you would like.
I want to go back before we
Yeah,
get
let's-
into the ed plan and talk about the numbers, because I've got some concerns about the numbers. Given that the reason the school was closed was low enrollment,
Yes.
which is less than the number of kids you're expecting, how are you anticipating that you're going to have that many kids?
There in the county has been, there's a need and a want for this school. So the low enrollment came from, they originally took away the 5th grade, which was there. And they've had some recurring issues at that site in terms of teachers and turnover and different things there. The community has been they've sought us out to be there, and has been very excited, and are hoping, it's kind of a hope for them that we're there. This is the last standing institution that they have within their community. The ones that were still left there were the ones that did not have a choice to go anywhere else because of financial reasons or whatever the case may be. But even those who have left have said they want to be back in their community and they're ready. We've done several marketing events and are still doing them. We had originally put together church leaders that came together to discuss whether they wanted this and how much it was needed. And it was something that they both wanted. and needed. Since then, those church leaders have continued to engage their churches in this conversation and having this school in their community. We also had a meet and greet within the community just less than a mile away from the school, where we had people to come out for hot dogs and hamburgers and just to be able to ask us questions, talk to us, and just get to know what we plan to do at the school. We've been on the radio several times. We've been to every festival and fair that they've had so far. And at each one, we've had parents looking for us when they see that we're on the thing and saying, some of them thought we would be there this year. They don't understand the process, but they're ready for us. I don't think that we would have that issue. I know that the LEA impact statement talked about their decreased enrollment, but we've looked at within 25 miles of, less than 25 miles of our school, all of the schools that we would be able to pull from if need be, and 10% was way over what our goal is. We're also planning to put together a street team to be able to go into these communities physically and just knock on doors and talk to people as well. But we're continuing to market, continuing to get out there, continuing to try to make sure that we're in the faces of those who may not have access and don't know where to look for access.
What's your break-even number?
The break-even was 170, so it's not.
According to the impact statement, it says that you would be taking 22% of the current enrollment.
I'm not exactly sure where she pulled her numbers from. We pulled numbers from 2018, 2019, average daily, the ADM. And for Columbus County schools, 6th through 8th grade, they had 1,127, which would be 112 students if we were doing 10%. Whiteville City Schools had 493 students, and if we pulled 49.3 would be the 10% there. And then we have some Bladen County schools are very close to us that some of our students have also gone to, which was 443 students, and 10% of that was 43.5 students. So about 205 students would be 10% of the LEAs that are around us within close proximity. And that did not include the actual school that closed because they didn't have the ADM for that up anymore. So the school that closed is not included in those numbers.
They got infused back into the other schools.
Right.
But that's assuming that you're gonna get 10% from each of those systems.
That would be the case, which is why we're actively in the community in all of those areas, letting them know that there is an option now. Before now, a lot of these students have not, the population that we are looking at hasn't had an option before now as to whether or not they can go to a different school. We do have Columbus Charter, but when Columbus Charter first started, and just put out there, my sister went to Columbus Charter at K through 8, but when they first started, which was her kindergarten year, they did not have transportation, they did not have lunch, so they had provided what was hot lunch, which you had to pay for. But many of the population that we intend to embrace, they do not have the funds for hot lunch, and they did not have the transportation to be able to get to that school. So this is one of the first times that this county will have a school that is allowing them a second option, a school option, and we're trying to make sure we reach all of those students to let them know they have that option.
How many students does Columbus Charter have, do you know?
I do not know.
How close would they be in proximity?
Columbus Charter is close in proximity. I would say maybe 10 miles. Columbus Charter, excuse me?
Do they have a waiting?
Yes, they have a waiting list, and their population is very different than ours. Columbus Charter only has about 22% minority population, and even that minority population is disproportionately below grade level. So,
I just have a follow-up on the numbers because I'm going through the appendices, and I mean, hats off to you guys. You've got a letter after letter after letter of people in the community, churches, businesses, even elected officials, it looks like, interested in this idea. But I'm not seeing data that, like, you're doing all the community events, but can you really say, I mean, do you know you've got X number of parents already saying that you open, we're coming? And I know you're 10 months out. But seeing a lot of community support, I'm just wondering all this, how's that manifesting itself into actual anticipated number of students to hit that 180 or your break even to 170? And I'm also not following because there was a survey done. But I'm looking at the survey, like people who took the survey are like from Maryland, Florida, Oklahoma City, Oregon. Like, I'm not understanding what this survey data is showing me.
I'm not sure of all of those cities, but the survey that we initially did was we put it out there not to just parents, but the community as a whole. This school was very much community-based, so the community really wants to have an input on what goes there next. The school was there since 1920 and was originally an African-American-based school there, and the community is mostly African-American. But when we first did the survey, about half of those were parents. Not all of them were 6 through 8, though. A lot of them were some all the way down to K, because we went K through 8 when we did the survey. But since then, we have done an interest form where we are looking at just 5th through 7th parents, which would mean they would be 6th through 8th once they get to us. And that survey, when we last came here, or that interest form, when we last came here, we were at 60. We did 3 different events, and at each event, we carried a hard copy of that interest form, which just asks what grade their child is in, how many children they have in each grade, and their contact information. And since then, we had 90 additional.
So if I may, but and maybe I'm misinterpreting it. It shows that there's a survey was given, Davis Academy Chadbourne Survey Summary Results. In which city do you reside? 63 responses. None of the responses are people that show that they even live in this area. So I'm confused.
I'm not sure if I don't have it in front of me, but when I look through, I know people that are on there. So we definitely had people that were, I don't have my phone up here, that were there. And some of the surveys we actually took from, some of those responses that are in there, we actually took from physical applications that we had at the meet and greet and input them into the system. So I'm not certain as to why showing barely any.
It's on page 65 of your appendices. Am I the only one seeing this? And it showed.
My notes say there was only 63 responses.
It's the appendices document. It's on page 65. In which city or town do you reside? I don't see a single response from anyone that lives in that area. And then how likely are you to send your child to a charter school? 56% said very likely.
A lot of those were also community members, so they didn't have a child to send, so we just put NA for those. But like I said, I actually, from the meet and greet myself, physically took the forms that we got from the meet and greet and also input those into that so that it would be able to produce the data. So I'm not sure why it's not showing anybody, because
your data, you provided it. We're just reading it.
Well, the other thing is 6 through 8. So yeah, I can see where you would attract 6th graders, but we're talking about a system that's very low population for students to begin with. There's only 5,500 students in the county, and then we're narrowing that down to 6th through 8th grade, and it's very difficult to transition kids in 7th and 8th grade. 6th grade, yes, but unless, in my experience, unless there's problems, you don't get the 7th or 8th grade students.
And what we've been gathering from the community, that there are problems. A lot of the population that we're pulling from, a lot of those, I don't know if you saw the statistics where for suspension rates. In Columbus County, suspension rates, out of 1,000 students, 279 African Americans will get suspended, and only 76 of their Caucasian counterparts get suspended. These are ongoing problems that they just got into school. My last interview here, they had just gotten into school, and a student had already been suspended on day 2 for a 10-day suspension. So as soon as you get in, you have a 10-day. These are the issues that we're seeing in the county. We also have one of the teachers that used to be at Whiteville City Schools, where they had a student labeled as remedial education, and she took the time and invested in him, and he was in honors classes by the end of that year because of the time that she put into him. We get tons of stories like this from the community, as where they're looking for an option where people want to invest in their children and want to see their children do well. They think there are a lot of substitutes in Columbus County system right now. One of our board members still substitutes. She's been in education for 25 years, so she still substitutes. And just her experience in the classroom, she says, is very different than I was a student in her classroom. And there's not a lot of representation as well in Columbus County schools of minority populations, while minority populations make up a large part of those school systems. The one that we're going to with 73% minority population and not that many minorities being represented there on the faculty and staff.
If I can go back to my earlier question, so 180 in the first year, let me kind of reword my question a little bit. What do you anticipate needing in the pipeline to get 180?
I'm looking at 225 to get, at least 225 to be able to get 180.
Do you feel you have, so you're feeling confident that you'll have that?
I'm doing everything possible to get there. Like I said, we've gone to festival. This weekend we were in Bolton at the Pine Tree Festival. We collected additional names there. It's just a matter of making sure those communities know that we're there. We have an active online presence, but a lot of those communities may not be online. So we're trying to do everything we can to be where they are to make sure that we get to that number.
You mentioned that part of where you're drawing from is 25 miles away. Are you providing transportation out that far?
Yes, we plan to have cluster stop in different areas, as long as we have people who want to attend in those areas. One population that we've talked to recently is the Waccamaw Siouan population, who are also looking for an option, and that's been one of their concerns. They didn't have the transportation to be able to get to the schools that they wanted to get to. So we do plan to provide a busing system and cluster stops for those locations.
When you talk about culturally responsive instruction, what are your plans if you have multiple cultures?
So based on what we saw at the school previously and what we're thinking, just based on the responses that we've gotten, our population will probably mimic what was there previously, which is mostly African American, 2 or more races, Native American, and Caucasian. When we talk about culturally relevant, it's not necessarily just culturally as in what my ancestor did as opposed to what your ancestor did, but culturally as in what's going on in our culture now that is relevant to you, or what is going on in your community now that is relevant to you. And so we all, even though we may be different ethnic groups, share a certain culture because of what's around us in our community. So that's kind of the direction that we're going there.
Is the head of school here?
She is not here today. Shonda,
she's on the board.
She is. We submitted her as being absent today. She just started an interim role as a principal for an alternative school in New Jersey. Their start date was September the 5th, I believe, and they were in mandatory trainings, and she could not step away from that.
She's going to be in New Jersey this year while you're trying to pull the school off?
She's only interim there for the principal. And she's been very intricate. She was here for the meet and greet. This is the first thing that she has not been able to attend. And just because it's at the start of their school. And that school is a school that is mostly students with IEPs, autism. It's specifically for that subgroup. And they want to make sure that they have consistency since they have a new principal this year. So especially at the beginning of the year that she's consistently there.
I understand that. I also just think that a lot of the application references her and what she brings to the table, and her not being here is a big problem in my view, because this is an accelerated school. So we're talking about, you've hired the principal. That's like one of the most, I would say that's arguably the most important thing outside of the facility. And it's, again, she's referenced multiple times in the application, which is not always the case. You know, people will not, they'll write the application, but they, you know, and they haven't identified the principal yet. Certainly with the with the acceleration, if you've identified the principal, that's a huge positive. And, you know, it's I don't know, it's hard because I feel like she's a big part of the puzzle, right? And not having her here today is not good. I mean, there's no other way to put it.
I understand. Myself, her, and Nishad co-founded this before it was ever a school for trainings. And so we have all been a part of the making of this together, which is why she's definitely referenced in there multiple times. I think we all bring a big piece to that puzzle. And so she is a large piece, but
Are you going to work at the school as well?
I do not plan to work at the school.
Does anyone else on the board plan to work at the school?
No.
Do you know how long our interim is for in New Jersey? Is that specified or is it open-ended?
She had told them that she would be able to go through the month of February if they needed her to go that long.
I mean,
And
this
that
is a-
was being contingent on this happening, because if this happened, her thought was that February, get into full stream here.
I think if it wasn't an accelerated, it wouldn't be as big of a deal to me. It's just like, and if the it's just, do you all agree
You're
with
planning
me?
year right now, right? You're going through the RTO
Yes,
now.
we are going through the planning year.
Is she gonna be able to attend RTO?
Yes, she hasn't attended. We just did the first one, so she did not attend the first one because that was literally right at the beginning. But yes, she does plan to attend some of the RTO sessions.
Was she here at the last one? The clarification.
She was not here at the last.
Yeah, not to move it away too far, but this kind of relates back to the facility and the education plan. Like, I like talking about, how you're planning out the seats, that you've thought through the temperature in the classroom and the getting the vitamin D and all that. Another thing that you said is removing the fluorescent ballast hum in the classrooms, which I think that is great because there is nothing that annoys me more than ballast hum or just fluorescent lights in general, the way that they flicker and do all that. They're horrible for you. I'm assuming you're going to put LEDs in, and depending on how many square feet you're talking about, there's your $50,000 right there.
There will be some things that we want to do that we know we may not be able to do in the first year. So we will have to pick and choose what is most important to facilitate the goals that we have. I was talking to someone recently about educational success and what it takes. A lot of times schools will say they need more money, they need more money, they need more money. There are studies out there that show schools that don't have the money but excelling the way that they need to excel because they put in other things or have other things going. One story I told someone recently, I have a grandmother who has done foster care. My grandmother only has a GED. She left school at 10th grade. Every child that has come into her home, which are children from this community, because the foster care system here, 80% of those are below school level. So every child that has come into her home has been at least 1 to 2 grade levels below school level. My grandmother does not have a formal education. She's never been to college. Every child, before they leave their home and within the year, is on grade level. And it's not because she has LEDs. It's not because her lights don't hum. She still has the furniture and the cabinets and everything that was there when I was born in 1983. Nothing has changed. It's because she's provided structure, she's provided love, she's provided expectation. And that's what we want to do in our school through our teachers. So some of the things that we've referenced, we do want to get there, but we know that we have the core within the teachers that we hire and the staff and the training that we provide.
What are the performance? What's the performance of the schools that you'd be drawing kids from right now?
It's in the application.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, is it?
11 out of 14, I think we're teasing it.
Also, I mean, if you look at they put a percentage of students performing below grade level by subgroup in there, which is, I mean, the application is well written. I think you're super compelling.
Yes, absolutely.
I think I have concerns about the. I would feel a lot better if, I don't know, I'm worried about you recruiting 60, 67th graders, 68th graders, 66th graders, because I think you'll be able to hit the mark in 6th grade. I worry about being able to do it in the other grades, as Sherry referenced. It's just really hard to pull in at 8th graders. I mean, you all,
Especially if you're going to leave the next year and go to
right, both, I believe the two people sitting at the end have worked in education and do so now. I think they must be aware of that. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. But the application is really strong, and I think the ed plan saw it. I guess my question on the ed plan is just, it seems. Okay, so you said you're using the Ready curriculum. You would use the Ready curriculum for 6th through 8th math. Is that right?
Correct.
And then it wasn't clear what the ELA curriculum would be for 6th through 8th, because you referenced Reading Street, and I would actually caution you against Reading Street. But what was the
That was one of the curriculums that we had looked at, but then on top of it, putting our thematic unit approach as well.
in middle school for middle school or just for elementary school? Because I think Reading Street is more a K-5 program, so I was just curious about the ELA curriculum for
I actually
middle
don't
school.
have the curriculum in front of me, but we actually put 2, I think, then for the ELA if it's not in there, because we tried to put ELA and mathematic curriculums in there.
Okay. I couldn't see what was named. I know iReady for
For math.
yeah, for the math. I guess so. Have you all visited a, because I think one of the things that you're attempting to do is to kind of draw together a couple different types of pedagogy. You've done a little bit better job of articulating how you might do this than I've seen recently in some other apps, but it's, you've talked about this brain-based model and then also kind of a data-driven approach and exit tickets. And have you guys been to a school or seen, could you kind of describe to me, like, what does a classroom actually look like? Have you been in a school that is like, hey, this is what we're trying to replicate here? Is that, and you don't have to answer all the questions. Some other board members can answer too.
I can answer this one just because
Sure, yeah.
this is part of Shonda, part of the experience that she brings to this. When she first started as a principal, she was 27 years old, the youngest principal in the state of New Jersey. She took on a school that was having riots at the time. They had had a national search to pull someone in. Within 2 weeks, that person said, I can't do this. So they just had to pull someone that was already there, and it was her. By the end of that school year, she had some of the highest gains in the state of New Jersey. And it was based on some of the ideas that she's plugged into the education plan here. After her appointment at that school, they then sent her to an elementary school to do the same thing. That elementary school had the same problems. Within the end of that year, 9 of the 12 indicators had raised, and these are using her same methods. After that, they created a position for her called the Culture and Climate Specialist, where she went into all of their other schools to the principals to say, here's how you change the culture and climate of your school to increase academic success. After that, she then became a special assistant to the Newark superintendent, where she created a multi-tier system of support with this education plan in place for that. So this is something that she's not only seen, but that she's done over and over again and seen the results from.
That's why it would be helpful to be
It's
able
such
to
a
talk
Yeah,
about
I
it.
just-
idea that really.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know. I mean, again, because that's kind of what we're getting. Like, you have you have a well-written application that is somewhat. And to your answer to my question about the kind of vision for the school was Shonda. So what you're saying is part of the vision of the school is encapsulated in this person, which is great. That's fine. That is often the way schools reflect the leader. So I guess my problem here is like, this is, if this was not accelerated, I feel like I would be able to say, okay, on the strength of the application and the board, although we'd probably like to hear a little bit more from other board members, but you are super compelling. And I think based on the letters of support and what I've heard about this school is, you know, the community's coming to you and saying, we want to have the school, and you're connected to this person that can run a really great school. But my hesitation is, you know, to make the case before the state board and say, I've never even met this person that is basically what this school is going to be, is difficult for me to do. And so I while I'm feeling like I would like to, I feel like this is a really strong application in a place that where the need is well articulated. There's not a lot of charter schools. There's a lot of community support in terms of letters and whatnot. I'm a little bit concerned about the kind of what Joe was saying about, on the one hand, you have a potential facility that could be great. I'm a little worried that, I don't know, that the district I mean, what's to say that they all of a sudden, they're actually working behind the scenes. The sheriff is really going to need this building, and rather than give it to you if this moves forward, I'm worried about that. But I mean, I feel like it's hard to make the case for the school to the state board as an acceleration without having had the opportunity to meet her. And we've had 2 interviews and we haven't met her. Now, again, if this wasn't a big part of what the school's about, but it is, right?
One of the things that I'll say on that, because we've got to start wrapping it up, that I think, and I want to say this and then ask one more question, is I think you've done a good job, even without her here, of being able to explain what that vision is that goes into it. And I think that, to me, while I would have loved to have been able to talk to the proposed school leader as well, but to hear a board member that understands it and gets it to me goes a long way. And I think you've done well with that. But I guess here's my question. Let's say that you don't get all the students that you think you're going to get. Your budget just got a lot tighter. How are y'all going to handle that?
If we don't get all the students that we are looking for, we've already started looking for grants, and even in our application had one person to say that they would provide granting that as long as it went directly to student support in a way. And that person was at least $50,000 or more. But we're looking for opportunities like that, as well as consolidating our budget if we need to. If we don't have as many students, we don't have as many teachers. And some of the other things that we can cut down. If we're in the daycare, that cuts down a lot of our costs because of the maintenance and the repairs are gone. I know that some of the concern is if we don't get into that building, if they're planning for the sheriff, the reason the county didn't put it back up for vote is because they don't have the money for the building because they would be purchasing it from the LEA. But even if for some reason they found the money, I feel like we have a strong solution, our contingency plan to be able to do that, even if they didn't. And go ahead.
Remind me, the connection with the school leader in the community is what?
So she is not from the community. Her parents are. She and I are first cousins. We spoke about that last time. Her parents are from the community. She has not been there. And I don't want it to seem that, or I don't want it to be that our education plan is her, because I think we have so much more here that is not contingent on just her. Yes, she's done this and she's shown, but she's already provided us with the plan to move forward, as she's done in the other schools that she's been a principal of. So even if she wasn't principal, we would still be able to move forward with what we have, and we have the resources here for that.
Part of my reason I'm asking that question is in the budget, the salary that's budgeted for that position is considerably less than what a principal in New Jersey makes.
Yes, she would be taking a substantial cut. So her highest salary in New Jersey was $140. She's at $120 now. She would be taking a considerable cut if she came. Now, even though she's not from the community, it's where our grandfather was born and raised. It's where her parents still are, and it's where we have connections to. And we have cousins that still attend schools there. So she's willing to take that if she needs to, if necessary, because of what we want to do there. This is more than about just today's student that would attend our school. If we do school right and we do it the right way, this is going to be generational for that population that we are looking at, which mimics what we look like, and that's what we want to do there.
Okay, yeah, let's, we've got to wrap it up. I'll let Joe ask the last question, but I will say to that, the cost of living is a whole lot less in Columbus County than it is New Jersey. Go ahead, Joe.
I would love to hear from the other board members that are here. I'm very impressed with the backgrounds of the board members. So you've heard the concerns, facilities, student enrollment, the school leader's not here. Give us a compelling 1 minute of why we should approve this school. I know it's tough, but go for it. Each board member, please.
I'll try to set the precedent for saying everything I want to say in 1 minute. I'm a lawyer. You know it's hard for me to do that.
All right, 2 minutes.
Okay, let me just start by using this phrase that didn't exist when I got frustrated working in a criminal legal system in Harnett County, and it was the school to prison pipeline. When I look at the population that this school intends to serve, I see a population that was and still is fueling a school to prison pipeline. I was very frustrated as a criminal defense attorney wanting to make a difference in that and trying to find a way to make a difference, and restorative justice to me was the way to make a difference. So giving schools an opportunity to stop using such punitive measures, out of school suspension, arrest, that tend to push kids out of school, and nothing good happens when that happens. To go into schools, create relationships where we can go in and offer an opportunity to help children resolve conflict through mediated efforts by trained practitioners such as myself and others that work in the Restorative Justice Clinic, to give schools an opportunity to use less punitive measures that don't push kids out but help keep kids in. And then not only do we see attendance efforts records rise, but we also see academic performance rise, and satisfaction and safety in schools is getting better. And that's one restorative tool that addresses behavior. The other restorative tool that addresses not behavior per se, but is a preventive measure that focuses on building relationship, building a positive culture, not only for the students in the school, but for the teachers and staff in the school. I mean, working with kids with trauma can be a very traumatic place to work, as we all understand. And so circle processes can be a very effective tool, not only to build community with kids, but to help to build community within the school and within the staff as well. And we have been experiencing this since 2003. We have relationships with over 50 schools in Wake County right now where we're doing this work from K through 12. We are expanding every day. Wake County Schools has put some skin in the game now where they're paying people full-time to go in and do this work, and we work collaboratively together to do that work. We are routinely invited from other school systems in the state to go in and help them to implement these processes as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hear the term equity quite a bit sometimes, but don't always know what that looks like. And to me, when I think about Davis Academy and I think about equity, I think about access and offering all kids, specifically kids from poverty, students of color, kids that have been traditionally marginalized, access to grade level content. It sounds really simplistic, but it happens way less often than you would expect, especially for kids within the community that we'd like to serve. So I think really just providing access to that grade level content, really pushing in through scaffolding, through continuous checks for understanding, through this cycle of inquiry and this cycle of continuous improvement through instructional practices shifting based on the needs of kids, I think is really critical, and I think it's something that Davis Academy will aim to do. When you look at the mission for this school, it is mission critical to be able to produce these change agents that will ultimately have an impact on first their community, then the broader community and the world. So again, I just feel that these students, just as all students, should have an opportunity to have access to that high quality education and to teachers that believe in them and hold them to high expectations. So again, appreciate the time and the opportunity to express the needs of the community today.
Denise, do you still live in New York?
I'm actually based in Raleigh.
Thank you guys for your attention today. There's a lot that Ms. Yolanda Davis said today to address you, and I think our application speaks volumes of the mission that we hope to establish at Davis Academy Chadburn. But I did want to crystallize a point that I think Mr. Walker and also Ms. Turner brought up, and just to alleviate any suspicion about our design in regards to curriculum and our educational success plan. So, of course, Shonda Davis is integral in the way in which we have chosen to design the trajectory for our educational outcomes. But as you know, school design is not based on one person. It's even though Yolanda and Shonda and I have been integral in our design for over the last 18 months, this is not a one-person engine. And I'll give you a tangible example of some of the curriculum design that I've been a part of working with here in North Carolina. Just one of my good friends, Mr. Donnell Cannon at North Edgecombe High School, I've participated in a lot of the curriculum design and the radical school change that he's doing out in North Edgecombe High School. A lot of the work that we do here in Wake County that Professor Powell just spoke about in regards to both culturally responsive teaching and learning and also rigorous alignment of an already existing curriculum. That is what we hope to do at Davis Academy. So culturally responsive teaching and learning, equity, and some of the cultural awareness that we speak about is not mutually exclusive from the rigor and the academic success that we hope to bring to this community. I have, as an educator, worked in Duplin County with Mr. Reginald Keenan and Rose Hill Magnolia and Wallace Elementary on the school design model as a teacher in 2013 up until 2016. Also worked in North Edgecombe High School in Nash Rocky Mount with the Children Defense Fund Freedom Schools. And they created a memorandum of understanding from Freedom Schools to Nash County Schools because of the radical design that we did for those kids in serving the population of South Rocky Mount. So whether I've been working with Duke Tip or Teach for America, I have myself operated in the capacity of curriculum design, and it's not just a singular model based on what we spoke of and what we referenced from Ms. Shonda Davis, but we have a team of people who are dedicated to designing a curriculum, designing a school culture based on equity, based on creating change agents and shaping a trajectory for the students at Davis Academy Chadburn. So I wanted to crystallize that point so that we can alleviate any concerns or suspicions about the direction educationally that we hope to establish at Davis Academy. And I thank you for your attention.
All right, thank you.
Are you related to Yolanda?
I am not. I met Yolanda at Campbell Law School. Yeah, I just recently graduated from Campbell Law, and I'm living in Charlotte as an attorney in Charlotte. But I'm here whenever you guys need me.
Okay, we got to wrap up the questions. Joe's 1 minute question took 7 minutes. It's okay, Joe. So yeah, you can sit down. We're going to talk about the application now. We've pushed over time. Thoughts anybody has?
I have to say, this is an extremely impressive board. And they speak to the heart of, my concerns about education. I think they're compelling as an organization. There will be challenges to trying to pull this off between now and July, but they seem to work hard and be willing to work hard. I'm going to support it.
I think I am too. And Joe, as much as I kind of just knifed you a little bit about that, to have the whole board knows what they're talking about. I mean, I feel like they're engaged in, that they've all bought into this. It's not where you've got to, we've seen a lot of them where a board chair gets up and the board chair is really impressive, and then you're like, well, let's talk to the treasurer, and the treasurer gets up there, and I don't think 2 + 2 is within the realm of experience. But that's not the case here with this board. This board seems to be very strong.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I feel like the questions that we asked, the answers were spot on. I feel like everything's been thought through, and when we asked contingency questions, that they had already thought through the answer. So I think that's very impressive there, because I think they are aware of the issues that can come up as this moves forward.
I would add that they mentioned being change agents, and that takes risk takers. And I think that these folks have demonstrated, at least in front of us, that they have, the wherewithal and the passion to do what it takes to get the school open and to provide what they have been charged to do through their application. So I'm going to support it as well.
would echo what's being said about the board. I think they're extremely passionate, strong, and truly care deeply for the community that they're attempting to serve. I don't think that's even in question. I do have concerns about the numbers. And I do have concerns about one of the academic goals that was put in the application in terms of their anticipated performance even first year out. And I sit here and think, on one hand, I agree with the chair, a little concerned that the head of school, who is an integral part of this application, hasn't been here both times. At the same time, how many schools even have their principal hired 10, 12 months out before they're gonna open? So I'm concerned about the numbers. I'm not at all concerned about the ability of this board to pull it off, but I am concerned about the numbers.
My comments, as far as the plant, what a refreshing application to read, one that's, has a very clear vision, and I think it has the support behind it. But I have two major concerns. We don't have a facility locked down, and that is a premise of acceleration. So we have contingencies, but, a school comes in and says, we have this lease right now, we're ready to go. We don't have that here, and it's gonna be very difficult to get 180 6th to 8th graders. Those are my concerns.
I think the facility concerns are legitimate, but can be alleviated if we move forward with a contingency to have some documentation provided by November, since a final approval won't come until December. So I think if someone makes the motion to move them forward, I think it's important to have some contingent upon documentation that solidifies a facility will be ready in July.
I think that they would have to, by our November meeting, I'm not saying they have to come back, but they have to have submitted a signed lease agreement to the Office of Charter Schools.
With an expectation of repairs or whatever.
Yeah. Could you have a signed lease by November, whenever our meeting is?
Yes, 12th, I think.
12th.
Yes.
Well, with that, do you have comments then?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to support the application. I'm going to do so with some hesitation. And I think it's, I have a couple, all the issues expressed, I have some concerns about the facility. I feel like I could feel a lot better about this application if I had some more information before I go before the state board in November to argue on its behalf. One, if I could speak with the principal, quite honestly, and just hear a little bit more. I know that seemed, maybe I'm being, I'm not trying to circumvent the process or anything, but the reality is, like, we're about to make a multi-million-dollar state grant of state funds, right? Let's make no mistake about what we are doing. They are going to get $1.2 million in year one alone. So we assume 5 years. That's, probably about $7-8 million, 5-year grant. That's every time we make this decision, that is the decision we're making. So, let's make no mistake about that and call it what it is. On top of, they will probably be eligible for, and I would hope get the access grant. So we're talking about probably over another $1 million of federal money. So given that, I think it's reasonable that if the principal is such a big part of this application, that we should have the opportunity, or a subgroup of us should have the opportunity to speak with them. I don't think that's an unreasonable request. I'm not saying we should withhold a vote, and I'm going to support it, but I feel like the accelerated request before the state board required an additional amount of attention and kind of case making. I don't know what the proper legal